Today we're going to be talking about how to avoid Wix's new pricing plan fees by moving the payments for your pricing plans to Stripe. Welcome back to the Wix Wiz. I'm Eitan. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to set up subscriptions in Stripe really simply with no code, and then we're going to be diving in a little deeper to see how we can establish two-way communication between the purchases that people make in Stripe and our actual pricing plans in Wix so that people can pay in Stripe and still get all of the access that they would in your site for purchasing a pricing plan. Let's get started. We have new videos every week, and that next one might just have the magic you need for your site and business. The best way not to miss it is to listen to all these happy subscribers and hit that subscribe button. For today's tutorial, I am in a plain classic Wix website. The only thing that I've done is installed Wix pricing plans. Everything I'm going to show you today, though, can also be done equally inside of Wix Studio. We're actually not going to start off with these pricing plans because what we're doing today is we're actually looking for an alternative to these pricing plans. And the alternative I'm going to be presenting is going to be Stripe. You could possibly find similar alternatives with other payment providers. The reason I'm using Stripe is because it's very popular and very robust. So I know it can do all the things that I'm looking for, whereas other payment providers may or may not be able to provide something similar. So within Stripe, essentially what we're looking to do is we are looking to set up a similar subscription model to what Wix pricing plans might offer. And the way that we can do that in Stripe, so here I have my Stripe sandbox. It's essentially just a place where I can test out Stripe without actually doing things on my live account. And as you can see here, I've already set up a recurring subscription here. And the first thing I want to show you to do is how to set up something like this. And it's really super simple. It takes like 3 seconds. So all you have to do is inside of Stripe, either inside of your sandbox or your actual account, you're going to go to your product catalog. Then you're going to go over here to create a product up here. You're going to give the product a name. So let me just call this, let's say, for example, example plan. And here you're going to set the pricing. So Stripe already defaults here to recurring. If you were setting up like a regular store product, you would do here one-off, but it's already set here to recurring, and you can just set the amount. So let's say it's going to be $15, and then the monthly billing is here, or you can change the frequency. So it could be yearly, it could be every so often. And this essentially what it'll do is it'll set up a subscription type product or something equivalent to the pricing plans in Wix. So I'm just going to go here and click add product. And there we go. So we have a pricing plan, quote unquote, set up here in Stripe. Now, how do we let people actually subscribe to this pricing plan? So I'm going to show you two ways. One is going to be a super simple way. But then I'm going to talk a little bit about the downsides or what you might be missing if you use that approach. And then I'll show you a slightly more complex way, which will essentially give you all of the capabilities that pricing plans used to give you. So let's go here into this example plan that I just created. The easy way to sell these pricing plans or subscriptions on your Wix website is to just create a payment link. And in order to do that, it's no code at all. All you have to do is go to this plus button here on the upper right, click create, and then you'll see here this option for payment link. And we're just going to go ahead and click that right over there. And here we're going to create, we're going to add the product to the payment link. So we're going to add this example plan in here. You can also add additional products. So you can allow somebody, for example, to subscribe to 2 plans at once, and or a plan and a product. And that's already a bit of a leg up to the Wix pricing plans, which is not very flexible in that sense. In the previous video from last week, where I talked a little bit about the change that's happening to pricing plans, or the pricing of pricing plans, I talk a little bit more about what the pluses and minuses are of pricing plans, and I go into this. So if you want to learn more about kind of what's behind what I'm claiming here, you can go ahead and watch that video from last week if you haven't seen it already. Once you go ahead and add in the product, you're pretty much done. You can check out all these other options here to add to the checkout page. But to keep things simple, I'm just going to go ahead here and create the link. And there we go. And now we have this link. And whenever somebody visits this link, they will be able to subscribe to the plan. So I could just go ahead and copy this link and go here to my Wix editor, let's say. And I'm going to go here to, let's say, my home page. And I'm going to set up a button. And let's say that this button will say here, let's say subscribe. And in terms of the link, I'm just going to put I'm going to choose web address and put the pay link over here. Click done. And now if I go ahead and publish my site, when somebody clicks on this subscribe button, it should send them to the Stripe checkout. So let's go ahead and check that out. So I'm going to go here to my live site, click subscribe. And here you can see already we have the option for somebody to check out and subscribe to my plan. So really, really simple. And this will work well if your pricing plans were not really fully integrated to the rest of your site. So you were just essentially using it as a solution to sell some kind of recurring product or value, and you were manually managing, how you actually provide that value behind the scenes. A lot of people, though, do have pricing plans quite heavily integrated into their site. So that means that, for example, you may have some pages where if we go to the page settings and access, then you might be providing access only to members with specific plan subscriptions, for example. Or you may be providing people with pricing plans some kind of privilege to do bookings, which can be integrated with pricing plans. Or those are the two main ones I think that could be integrated in terms of pricing plans. But essentially, if you're actually leveraging pricing plans to allow people to do things on your actual site, then that will create a bit of a complication for you because somebody purchasing something on Stripe doesn't really give them access to your site. So the next thing we're going to explore is how we can customize this a little more so that when somebody buys a pricing plan on Stripe, we can actually assign them the corresponding pricing plan within Wix. That is going to require a little bit of coding. So, put your seatbelts on and get ready for some coding. And let's check out that other option. In order to have our Wix plans orders update automatically when somebody purchases a pricing plan here on Stripe, we're going to have to establish essentially a two-way communication between our Wix website and Stripe. And we're going to need to pass certain information between the two when a purchase happens or a cancellation happens in order for Wix to reflect the changes that happen in Stripe. So the first step will be when the person purchases the plan, we need to essentially have a way to tell Stripe who it is that purchased the plan. And obviously in the Stripe checkout itself, you can put in like an email address and whatnot, but that's not a 100% reliable piece of data because it could be that somebody signed up to our Wix website with one email address and put a different email address in the Stripe checkout, and that would make it very hard for us to correlate. So the most reliable piece of data or information that we can pass to Stripe in order to confirm who the person is that's making the purchase would be our Wix's member ID. Okay, so we essentially need to get our member ID here within Wix, and we need to somehow pass that to Stripe. So the simplest way that I can find to do that would be to use URL parameters that can be added to this this checkout or this payment link URL. And you can see here, if you click URL parameters near the payment link URL, there are a list of different parameters that you can add in. And one of them here is a client reference ID, just like that. And if I put here a value, for example, of test, then you'll see here that essentially at the end of the URL, right over here, it's adding in this query param with a client reference ID. So instead of adding that in over here, what we can do is essentially copy this same idea. And instead, on our Wix website, we're going to want to get the current logged in member's ID and add that member ID to the end of that query param so that we can essentially tell Stripe who the member is that currently is using this checkout link. or this payment link. So here back in Wix, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to turn on dev mode. And you can find dev mode over here on the upper left, right over here. If you happen to be inside of Wix Studio, then you'll find it on the left side panel towards the bottom. It'll look like squiggly brackets, kind of like this, okay, which you see here, but it'll be showing by default before you go into dev mode. And here on dev mode, essentially what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get the current logged in member. And assuming that there is a logged in member, we're going to assign their member ID to as part of the URL. So first, let me go ahead and just paste the URL that we copied over here inside of the code panel. You can see that this is the code panel for the home page because it says home right over here. And I'm going to say here const, let's call this payment link. Let's add an underscore here, link equals to, and I'm just going to paste what we have here, and I'm going to get rid of the test that we have here at the end. Okay, so you see there's no test, it just says equal, and then there's nothing left here, and that's where we're going to add in the member ID. So in order to get the logged in member's ID, we're going to need to use a Wix package from the SDK, and that's going to be the site member package. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to import get member from and here we're going to have @wix/site members, just like that. And it says here that there is no get members declared. Okay, has no exported member get member. So let me take a look here for a second at the documentation over here. So this is what I'm talking about over here. Wix from Wix site members. Okay, get member. It seems, I think I got it right. Oh, it's current member, sorry. Okay, that's my bad. So it's current member from @wix/site member. So let me just fix that up. And if you're ever having trouble, you can check out also the SDK docs. Just note that these are part of the front end modules, which are currently not in the shared docs with the REST APIs. This is only inside of the pure SDK. You could technically also use Velo as well. So let's just go over here, and I'm going to fix my little mistake here. So instead of get member, this is going to be current member, just like that. And that should allow us to get the current member who is logged in. So let's go over here to our onReady. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add some code to get the current member. So we'll say here const member equals to await. And you'll notice here that there's kind of a red squiggly line under the await. And that's because we need to turn this into an async function. And then here we're going to say await current member dot get member. That's where my get member came from. And this should get us the current member if there's somebody logged in. And after we get the member, we're going to want to get the member ID. And if we take a look here at the documentation, at the return type here, then we'll see underscore ID should be the member ID. Okay, so then if I go here back to the editor, I can say here if member. Okay, so if we actually did get back a member, because if there's nobody logged in, then there won't be a member. We can say here const member ID equals to member dot underscore ID. And then we can also say const final pay link equals to payment link plus member ID. So essentially that's just going to add the member ID to the end of our pay link. And then we're going to want to essentially assign that pay link to our button over here, right? So we can go ahead and name this button or give it an ID, and we can say subscribe button, and then go over here into our code, and we'll select the subscribe button, and we'll say dot link equals to final pay link. And what I'll do is I'll also enable the subscribe button dot enable. And we'll set the subscribe button to actually be disabled by default by unchecking this enabled thing over here. So it'll only be enabled once we actually got the member ID and attached it to the subscribe button. And if there's no member logged in, then it just will never enable. What we can do is we can also add just like a console log over here. So console.log, and we'll log the member. Just that's for debugging purposes. If there are any errors or anything like that, that will help us understand why it might not be working. So let me go ahead and I'm going to publish the site with these changes. And then we're going to head over to the live site and see how this looks with a logged in. Here we are on the live site. And before I log in, let me first show you what it looks like if you're not logged in. So you can see this is kind of grayed out. And if I go here to inspect and to console, then you'll see here that member is undefined. Okay, right over here. And because there's no member logged in. So now let me go ahead and log in. I'm going to actually create a new member. I'm just going to sign up. Let's do Bob at the wixwiz.com. And I'll create a very secure password here. I'm not a robot, and sign up right over here. Okay, and this should automatically log me into the site. But I don't think we wrote any code to kind of handle when somebody logs in. So I'm going to actually just refresh the page, and that will rerun our code. And now you can see that the subscribe button here is active. And if I go here into inspect and check out the console, so you'll see here we have a member object here on the side with all of the information, and most important to us is the member ID. And if I go ahead now and I click on the subscribe button, so you'll see that this client reference ID is attached over here on top. Okay, this is what we were trying to, whoops. This is what we were going for over here. I don't know why when I zoom it gets rid of it, but hopefully you can see that up over here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the entire checkout process, and I'm going to show you how this client reference ID is sent to Stripe and what we're going to do with that information once we have it. I have completed the subscription. And as you can see here, there's a subscription here in my list of subscriptions in Stripe. And just for example's sake, you'll see here that I used a different email address than the one that I used to sign up for Wix. And that's part of the problem that we're trying to solve here. So the client reference ID, you actually won't find it here anywhere with regard to the actual subscription. The place that client reference ID is used is inside of the events. And events is a developer concept. And it's essentially something that happens inside of a platform or service, which has data associated with it. So you can see here different events like invoice paid, checkout session completed, etc. And I'm just going to refresh the list of events that I have over here. And you'll see that there's a new checkout session completed event, which is around the time which I just made the subscription. And if I click on that event, and if I go down over here to the event data, then you'll see here that we have the client reference ID, okay, right over here. And this is actually the member ID from Wix. So essentially we have information about which Wix entity, which Wix member made this purchase inside of Stripe. Okay, that's very helpful to us. And what Stripe is going to do is if we subscribe to Webhooks, okay, then whenever there's one of these events, we can tell Stripe to send this data to a certain address that we decide, to a certain URL, and then we can have this information in Wix as well. So essentially what that will do is that'll complete the circle, and essentially it will give us all of the information that we need of the fact that a person has made a purchase, or unfortunately if they decide to cancel, if they've made a cancellation, and kind of what their reference ID is and whatnot. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set up that webhook so that when this information, so that we can essentially listen to this kind of event and get this data in Wix, and then we'll see inside of Wix how we're going to handle that data. So in order to set up the webhook, before we set up the webhook, I just want to stress as kind of a summary to the payment link that we set up is that the approach that we took is not the only approach that you can take. So there are other ways to both programmatically create payment links and to programmatically create checkouts in Stripe which would be slightly more robust than the approach that we took. One issue that could possibly arise with our approach is that it's really very dependent on the fact that the person doesn't accidentally, for example, erase the query param from the payment link. If they do that, then we won't have the information about their member ID. So in most scenarios, it shouldn't be an issue, but it's not a 100% vacuum, which will prevent any kind of issue. And if you are looking for that kind of solution, then there are other ways to approach this, which would be, more, I don't want to say secure because it's not a security issue, but it would be more secure in terms of building a system. So now that we put that aside, I mentioned that also because what I'm going to show you now is how to handle the webhooks using Wix automations. So if we go over here to our dashboard, you have a section here for automations. And this is one way to do webhooks in Wix. And there's another way to do webhooks, which would be to use HTTP functions, which is slightly more complex. And that's what I'm choosing to use the automations. And that's also why I chose to use the payment links, is because I'm trying to show you the simplest way that I can think of to set this up. But there are more complex ways, which are also sometimes more robust and can allow for a little more flexibility. So if you're a developer or if you're planning on bringing on a developer, you're not necessarily constrained to building it exactly like this, but I'm trying to provide the simplest way that I can think of for somebody who might not be so code savvy or prefers not to get too technical. So here, we're still going to need to be writing a bunch of code, but less. Okay, so here we have custom automations. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an automation here. And I'm going to start from scratch. Okay, you can see here this option here, start from scratch. And for the trigger, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a webhook received trigger over here. Okay, and this is going to be our webhook URL. So if we go ahead and we copy that, we're going to set that inside of Stripe. Okay, so let's go back over here to Stripe, and we need to set up webhooks. So let's add a destination here. And I'm going to choose your account because we're not using connected accounts at the moment. And you have the option to listen to all events or to specific events. I think we don't need all events. I don't recommend listening to all events because that will just really overwhelm you. But it would be payment session completed. I think that's one that we saw that we wanted. That's where we had the information. Let's see if I can find that one. Payment.session. Payment. Okay, let me go back and see. Let me go back and see what the events are actually called. So if we go back to, where was it? Events. So, okay, sorry, checkout session completed. Okay, so that's one event that we want to listen to. And the other one that I want to listen to is, well, it could also be, let's see if customer subscription created also has that one. In terms of I don't think it does. No, just the checkout session. So we'll do checkout session completed. We could also do customer subscription created if we want. And let's start with checkout session completed. Let's start with just that one, and we can set up other ones later on if we want. So let me go ahead and add this over here. And let's do checkout.session.completed. There we go. Okay, so we're subscribing just to this webhook for now. Webhook endpoint, continue. And let's call this one Wix. And I'll put the, I'm pasting here the URL that I copied from the Wix automation. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and create a destination. And if I go over here, so back to our events, what I can do is I can copy this event data that we have over here from checkout session completed. And then I can go over here to Wix automations and I can set the payload data structure. So I can just go over here and paste this right over here. And hopefully it's a data structure that Wix accepts because I've had some issues with this before. Let's go ahead and preview structure. No, Okay. Yeah, so this is a problem that I've encountered before. There are certain structures that Wix doesn't kind of allow in terms of the payload, but it's actually not so critical for us because we're going to be handling this using code anyways. So let's go ahead here and apply. And what we can do now is we're going to go ahead here and add a step, and we're going to add an action. And what we're going to do is we're going to write some Velo code. So let me go over here, run Velo code. Okay, right over here. And this is essentially going to allow us to customize the experience after the webhook is received. So once we go over here, we're going to turn on dev mode. And let's call this pricing plans. Okay, create and start coding. And this is going to create like the equivalent of a backend file here. So what we're going to have is we have this invoke function, which is going to have the payload from our webhook essentially. And then we can write code here to do essentially whatever we want. And part of what we're going to be doing is we're going to do a few things. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to store data from the webhook because this is the only webhook which is going to give us which is going to have the client reference ID. And if we get future webhooks from Stripe, it's not going to include the client webhook ID. So essentially what we want to do is we want to store information about the subscription that we can use in the future to do correlations if we need to. And the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to actually subscribe the person to the plan. So purchase plan for member. Okay, so those are the things that we're going to want to do over here. So let's start with storing data from the webhook. So I'm just going to go ahead and just click save over here. And we're going to be editing this code in a moment. There shouldn't be any errors because we okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over here to back to the Wix editor. And initially what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the code over here inside of the editor, inside of a backend file. So let me just go over here and add in a JS file, and we'll call it pricing plans dev. And here we're going to write the initial code because it's going to be a little easier for us to test and evaluate here. And then we're going to put that code inside of our Wix automation. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to start with storing the data that we got from the webhook. So let me actually paste the webhook data over here first so that we can play around with that and see everything that we're going to get here. And I'm just going to comment it out just like that. And here we're going to need to import the Wix data package. So let me just go ahead and zoom in here. And by the way, here you can see the Velo action, and we can also actually edit the code over here. So if we go over here, we could actually write the code in here as well. And that's what we'll move it to after this. Yeah. What I'm doing might be redundant, but I do feel just it's a little cleaner for me to develop the code over here. And by the way, we can also import functions that we develop over here into this file as well and keep everything kind of like nice and clean. Yeah, it's really up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here, and I'm going to install the Wix data package. So we'll have here import items from @wix/data. Okay, and this is a package that is not installed yet, so I'm going to go ahead and install it. And I'm also going to want to have the packages for creating orders inside of Wix pricing plans. So for that, if we just take a peek here back at the documentation, I'm going to go here to the joint reference. So here we have the API reference, SDK, and I'm going to go over here to plans. Pricing plans, orders, and we're going to be using this create offline order API. So I'm just going to copy this import from right over here initially, Control C, Command C, and head back over here and paste that right over there. And again, this package we're going to need to import over here. So let's start building out our code. So the first thing is we're going to want to store this data in a CMS collection, or at least some of the data. So actually, before we write any code, let's go ahead and create that collection. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new CMS collection, start from scratch, and we'll call this Stripe subscriptions. And let's explore and see kind of what data we want to be storing over here. So first thing we want is the member ID. Okay, that is something we definitely want to keep track of. And I'm actually going to set that, that's member ID. I'm not going to set that as the primary field, because I think that we should actually use subscription IDs as the primary field, because a member might have multiple subscriptions. So let's go ahead here and see if we can identify what other data we want to include. So let's see here, customer. So we have information about the invoice. We have information about the payment link, and we have the subscription. Okay, so this is really what I think we want over here, this subscription ID. This will be our link back to Stripe. Okay, so we're going to have inside of our Stripe subscriptions collection, we'll have a subscription ID. So let's go ahead and add that in. Subscription ID. And this is going to be our primary. Make primary. And this we're going to get rid of. Title, we don't need this. Okay, so this is really, I think, the only two data points that we really need. We might add a data point later on, maybe for, if it was canceled or not, or what the paid status is or something like that. But I think initially to get us started with this seems to work. One more thing, I'm just going to check my permissions and privacy, and I'm going to set this to advance, and I'm going to set it like this so that only collaborators have all permissions on this collection. There's no reason any of the users should be able to do anything with it. So there we go. So now that we have that CMS collection set up, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build out a function. So let's say export function, async function. And this function will call save subscription, let's say save Stripe subscription. Just like that. And we'll pass in here, let's say, the payload. Okay, so an entire payload from Stripe. And what it will do is we're going to have to find two things. One is going to be the client reference ID, which we have over here, which seems to me to be nested. So there's payload.object, and then I think it's just one level under object. So we'll say here const member ID equals to payload.object.client reference ID, just like that. And because I pasted this object over here, so it kind of knows how to automatically fill this stuff in. And the other thing we'll do is we'll do subscription ID. Const subscription ID equals to payload.object. That I'm actually not sure if it's, well, it has to be .object. And then let's see what the next thing is under there. Let's see if there's subscription ID. No, let's see. I found it before. Payment link, subscription, .subscription. but that also looks like it's nested under what is this nested under? Okay, what I could do is let me grab this because it's always a little hard to see things like this. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to my handy dandy JSON viewer and paste that over here inside and go to viewer. And okay, so we see here object, and then nested under object, we have shipping option. Oh, it is nested directly under object. Okay, so that confirmed. So let's go back here to the editor, and then it would be .object over here and .subscription, just like that. So that will be our subscription ID and our subscription and our member ID extracted from here. And then we'll want to save that to our collection. So we'll say here const saved object equals to saved subscription equals to, and we'll have here await items dot save, and here we need the collection ID, so we can actually copy that from right over here inside of your collections. You can just click copy collection ID and put that right over here. And then we're going to need to pass in the data. So I'm just going to pass in the data like this, member ID and subscription ID. And I named the variables the same as our actual field IDs over here that you can see. And that's why I can just put it in like this. If you name them differently, then you'll have to do like member ID and then write something here, essentially like that. There we go. And then we can just do console.log save Stripe subscription like that. And we could also saved subscription, sorry, like that. And we can also wrap this all inside of a try catch, just so that if there are any errors or anything, we can catch that and figure it out. So let me just do Command X, put that in there. And console dot error. And one thing that that we're going to run into, which I need to solve now before I forget, is that we're going to need to elevate this save from the items, because essentially we need to save this as an admin because of the permissions that I put on the collection. So in order to do that, we're probably also going to need the same elevations for some of this order stuff. So let's get that out of the way. And I'm going to import auth from Wix Essentials at Wix/essentials, just like that. And we're going to import that as well. And what we're going to do here is that before we use any of these actual methods, let me close this, like items.save, we're going to elevate it. So we'll say here const elevated save items equals to, whoops, let's combine that together. Elevated save items equals to auth dot elevate, elevate, and here we're going to pass in the items dot save. And then here underneath, what we're going to do is we're going to call, instead of this, we're going to call elevated save items. Just like that. And that way we know that it'll kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Kind of surpass all the permissions and be submitted, even though we are not necessarily calling it as admins. So that's that. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're actually going to want to create an order for that specific member. Okay, so what we're going to do over here now is we're going to create a new function. So export async function, and we'll say create pricing plan order for member. And then what we could do in here is we can pass in here, for example, let's say a saved subscription. And here we can say that const member ID equals to saved subscription. Okay, because that's going to be data that we have inside of the collection. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to use the create order API, which I showed you before. So let's see if we can do that. So we'll say const created order equals to await. And here we're going to use the orders dot create offline order. And let's see what information we need. So essentially what we need is we need a plan ID and we need a member ID. So here there's another level of complexity that gets introduced depending on how many plans you have. Let me try and explain. So plan ID is the plan ID in Wix. So currently inside of Wix, I only have one plan that I created, which is parallel to the example plan. So if I open up this plans collection here from the CMS, and you'll see I have this example plan. And here I have, go to manage fields, toggle on the ID field here. And then I will have here ID. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. Copy that. And here we can, on top, say const example plan ID equals to, and then save that over here and use that. So that's if we have one plan. But if we have multiple plans, essentially we're going to have to figure out, based on the Stripe plan that they bought, which Wix plan we want to give them. So let's see here if we can find some kind of metadata about the actual product that they purchased, which is different than the subscription ID. The subscription ID is a unique ID for their subscription. Let's see here. We have the payment link. We have an invoice ID, customer account, customer, client reference ID. Interesting. So it doesn't seem like we have information about the actual, we don't have information about the actual plan here. So that means what we would need to do is we would need to use the actual subscription ID in order to get information about their about the product that they actually purchased, which is unfortunate because it would be a lot easier if everything was just all in here. Let me just double check and see that we don't have anything. Yeah. So yeah, that would require us to make an API request to Stripe. So I'm not going to do it now because I really want to try and keep this as simple as possible because I know that it's already long, this tutorial, and if I try to make it even more robust, it'll be even longer. But essentially what you would need to do if you have multiple plans that you're offering, which I imagine is quite a few of you, you're going to need to use the subscription ID. Let me show you in the Stripe documentation. Let's go over here to the Stripe docs. So this is the Stripe docs. Let's go over here and look at the API. And let's look for the subscription. So here we'd have subscriptions. And let's take a look at the subscription object and see if this subscription object includes the actual, So here you can see that inside of the subscription object, we have the actual plan that they purchased with the price ID over here. And this is essentially what you would use in order to identify and see which pricing plan or which subscription or subscriptions they actually purchased. And then essentially what you would need to set up is inside of your Wix inside of here, either in a collection or here inside of the code, you would essentially create like a map between the different IDs. So you would have here, let's say const, you would have const plan map. And then here you would have, let's say, example Stripe price. And then here you would have price ID. And here you would have Wix plan ID. Okay, and then you'd have another one and another one. And then based on a Stripe price ID, you could figure out which Wix plan ID and then go ahead. So there's one extra step that you need if you're handling multiple plans and using that specific API, which I just showed you. But for for simplicity's sake, let's go back over here and get it set up basically, and then we can discuss maybe making things more complex. So over here in the create offline order, we're going to have here a plan ID, example plan ID, and we're going to have the member ID. Okay, and that's going to create the order. And one thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that this order is marked as paid because from our perspective, they paid through Stripe. So this is a paid order. So if we go over here, we should take a look at the different options. And here we have an option of paid, and we want to set that to true. So let's go back here to Wix, and here, right next to our members, we're going to add in an object with paid, and that's going to be set to true. Okay, just like that. And then what we can do here is we can console.log created order, just like that. And then over here, we could also wrap this in a try catch, just like this. Grab all of this, put this in the try, and then over here we could do console.error if we have any errors, just like that. And that should be enough to get us started. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to try just importing these two into this pricing plans file, which we created before. Because I prefer not have heavy code in here because this is just like, it's like kind of like a delicate, it's a delicate little space here, I feel, inside of the automations. So let's have over here import. And we're going to import those two functions. So we're going to have save Stripe subscription. And we're going to have here create pricing plan order for member. From backend / pricing plans dev. Just like that. And then here, once we have this invoke over here, so we'll say here const saved subscription equals to await save Stripe subscription, and we're going to pass in the payload. Okay, just like that. And then we'll have here const. We'll have const created order equals to await, and yeah, we'll have await create pricing plan order for member, and we'll pass in the save subscription, and we may be able to return, saved subscription, and we may be able to return this created order if we wanted to use it, later on in our automation. But for now, I'm just going to leave it like this. One thing I just want to make sure here, so this, I forgot to have this return saved subscription over here. Saved subscription, and here also to return created order, just so we can use those outside of the functions as well. Otherwise, nothing would have really worked. So yeah, I think this should be enough. Now we're ready to do some testing. So I'm going to go to the automation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate this automation. And I'm going to see if we can actually test this. So let's go, first of all, let me open up, let me just refresh here in my dashboard so I have all the developer stuff that I want. So here we have the developer tools, and I'm going to open up the Wix logs over here just so we can see kind of any errors that we might have during this process. Back over here into Stripe. And let me see if I can resend this event. Sometimes you can resend an event instead. Okay, so I figured out that you can do the resend thing, but only after you've activated a webhook and you sent an event that webhook catches. So it's not through this events tab, but it's through the webhooks tab. So I did need to do another checkout. And I sent a few webhooks, but unfortunately the automation doesn't seem to be working. It's a little hard to tell why, but I think it has to do with the payload data structure, which I tried to play around with. But essentially, it's sending back a 200 response. And if we take a look here at the run log, these are all ended successfully. But for some reason, the webhook says it's not receiving any kind of data, and there's not really any way for me to get more visibility into this with automations. So it's a little bit of a bummer, but it does give me the opportunity to show you the other option that I was talking about, which is the HTTP functions. So let's try and do like a small shift in approach and do it that way. So I'm going to go back over here to our site, and I'm going to go here to backend and public. And here in the backend files, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in expose site API. And this is essentially HTTP functions. And what this allows us to do is essentially kind of expose a similar URL to the other webhook URLs that we used before, so that we can send the webhook and control it here in this code right over here. So the way that the URLs are going to look are something like what you see over here, just using your own site's domain. So this here is my domain right over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this so we have that for posterity. And over here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and put that kind of right over here before where it says underscore functions. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, and I'm going to get rid of the rest of all these comments over here, and I'm just going to comment this out. So this is kind of what our webhook URL is going to look like in the end. What you see right over here, just this multiply is going to be changed to the name of our actual request here. So first of all, instead of a get, we're going to want to change this to a post. Because that's what usually webhooks are sent as. You can also double check with whatever service you're using or with Stripe, but I'm 99.9% it's a post, and this will call it a Stripe webhook, just like that. And here we're going to get our request. So this Stripe webhook, just this part is going to go here at the end of our function, and this is going to be our new webhook that we're going to give to Stripe. Now here inside of this Stripe webhook, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to handle it. So what we can do over here is first we're going to want to get the body of the request. So we can say here const body equals to await, and we'll turn this into an async function here. And we'll have here request dot body dot, I think we have here dot JSON. I think we can do it like that, and we'll add in here a log just to make sure. So we'll have here console dot log body, just like that. And then here inside of the try catch, what we'll have here is essentially, let me get rid of this, and we'll if everything goes okay, then we'll return an okay. And if not, then we'll return bad request. Again, I'm not going so much into detail here about HTTP functions. I have a whole tutorial just on this topic if you want to check it out. But what we're going to do here is essentially we're going to run the same code that we were running over here, just in the other one. So let's copy over our import. And I'm just going to put that right over there. And we'll copy over the actual functions as well. So we'll just grab these two. and head over here. And luckily, because we built our code in kind of like a reusable way, so everything is really easy. Here, instead of payload, we're just going to pass in the body like that. And hopefully this all should work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to publish the site. And I'm going to grab this webhook that we have right over here and head back to Stripe. And we're going to change, we're going to edit the destination of this webhook. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste this new destination that we have over here and save destination. And let's see, event deliveries. So hopefully we can test with these past events again, and I don't have to go through the whole checkout process again. But let's go ahead and close some tabs here. I think I just closed out the editor by accident. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear our logs. And I'm going to try and send the this test event again. So let's go ahead and resend that. And let's see. So if we refresh the status over here, okay, so it says that we got an OK back. So let's go ahead here and check our logs. So let's see over here. So here inside of body, so we have a body that looks right. So that looks good. Let me go ahead and see here why something failed here. And this is our saved. This is our saved object, but you can see here that it doesn't have the member ID or the subscription ID. So we're getting a body, but let me take a look at this actual body that we got back, and let's see how it might differ than the body that we planned for. And that might explain why we're not getting kind of all the right data. So let's go back over here to our JSON viewer and paste this in here. And we can see here that this event doesn't look exactly like the other event that we had in Stripe. And that's, yeah. So I don't know why it's different. That's a little bit of either I misinterpreted something or Stripe has a little issue there with their kind of consistency. But yeah, using the live data is always the most secure thing. And this, yeah, I'm wondering if this could also explain why the automation might not have worked, possibly. But I'm happy that we did this because otherwise we wouldn't have had visibility into this and really understood kind of why this wasn't working. And if we, yeah, so this is actually, okay, so if I would have looked at this actual event here, then I would have seen that it looks the same and different than the other thing that we saw before. But yeah, so let's just adjust our code to fit this new structure. So essentially what we need is we need to take a look here at data object. And then here we have everything that we had before, if I'm not mistaken. So it's really just a matter of drilling down into body.data, then .object before. Okay, so let's go ahead and head back into the editor, which I will need to reopen because I accidentally closed it before. So let's head back into edit site. And what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit of code that will hopefully smooth this all over by drilling down into the actual the body, like the body, so that we have the object and not, we're not trying to go from the top level to those other properties that we were looking for before. So let's go back over here to HTTP functions, to our pricing plans.dev. And then here, essentially, where we pass in the payload. So instead of payload.object.client.reference.id, so it's essentially going to be payload.data.object. Okay, payload.data.object. And I think that should solve our issue. So I'm just going to publish this change. And then after we publish the change, we can resend the event from, there we go. So our site is published, and I'm going to clear this over here, and I'm going to try to resend our webhook. And let's see, hopefully this time, okay, we got a 200 back again. Let's check our logs. And Okay, so this time we get a different error. And let's first check our CMS. So I'm going to go over here to Stripe subscriptions. And here I think we'll see the data. Yeah, so we have our subscription ID and our member ID. So our problem was essentially giving the person the plan. And the reason I think this happened is, again, because of what I told you that I needed to do, but I didn't do, which is to elevate the this orders.create offline order. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. So we'll do here const elevated order create offline order, and that will be equal to auth.elevate, and we'll pass this in over here. And then what we'll do is, instead of using this, we'll use the elevated option. So we'll just put that right over there. Okay, and I think that will do the trick. So let me go ahead and publish that change. And then we're just going to run everything again. And hopefully, what is this, the fourth or fifth time's the charm. So let's go ahead and clear that out. And I'm going to go to the Stripe dashboard. I'm going to resend the webhook. And again, this resending of the webhook is essentially simulating somebody subscribing, okay, to through Stripe. Okay, so every time somebody subscribes through Stripe, one of these is going to be sent out. And then we can see over here, so it looks like the subscription was created in Wix. So like if we go over here now to our sales, and I go here to subscriptions, then we can see that we have one subscription sale to Bob at thewixwiz.com, and it's active. Okay, and it's paid. So that's essentially step one. And I'm going to wrap up this tutorial here because I think everybody probably needs a break. But there are other things that you need to set up with regard to this. So it's not enough just to give people access. You also want to be able to take away access if they cancel their plan inside of Stripe, and that would be also something that you'd handle through webhooks. So you'd set up a webhook for the plan cancellation, and then if they cancel their plan, then you'd also programmatically cancel their plan over here in Wix. Yeah, there might be other situations that you want to account for, like if they default on a payment or stuff like that, more kind of edge cases. But I think that, realistically within, a few hours, you can have this fully set up, and then essentially use Wix pricing plans kind of as how you manage the plans from a site perspective, whereas the payments themselves will happen in Stripe, and by that you'll avoid the fees that we talked about last week. So yeah, let me know your thoughts below. Feel free to comment if you have any questions, or if you want to see kind of like a follow-up to this tutorial. Maybe I'll create like a slightly more clean version of this tutorial that's not quite so long. But for now, this is what there is. If you enjoyed the video and you appreciate me talking for 2 hours straight, then you can go ahead and give a thumbs up. And if you don't want to miss out on things like this, which can really save your business a lot of money on a weekly basis, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.